Hello, I'm Stephen Fisher and today I'm going to talk to you about technology. Hello, here at Intermediate we love our technology. We basically live it, dream it and we utilise it to create creative experiences. It's what we do. It's what we want you to do. It's our passion. It's our drive. So we want to see how technology can be utilised in more engaging ways. And today I'll be talking about realities. The tangible to the digital, it's the thing that's around us stuff, basically. And today I'll be focusing mainly on two polar opposites, which is the augmented reality universe and the virtual reality universe, and how we, the real world, interact with both and can utilise both in their various ways. You may notice on my head that I'm wearing Google Glass. The Google Glass, for example, if we look at it here, works via essentially a little projector in this unit here, which projects onto a small crystalline glass surface in there. So it projects a little screen in front of your eye, about here-ish. Essentially it runs off Android, it's just a phone screen in front of your eye. This, for example, would fall into the category of mixed reality. Closer to the augmented reality side, it's basically an overlay on the physical world. But we'll go into more detail about that when we talk about augmented reality. So for today's purposes, the Google Glass won't be talked about a lot. And I don't suppose, to be honest, a lot of people will ever talk about these things because they kind of failed. But they're really amazing if you can get your hands on some, quite cheap. They're cool, they're useful, but just not relevant for today's talk, really. So let's get going. First I want to talk about augmented reality now. You know, a staggering amount of us have these amazing devices we call phones, whether it's Android or Apple or, whatever. And they all mostly have camera features nowadays. So, what is augmented reality? Augmented reality is the digital overlay on a real world setting. Basically, you point your camera or phone device, which has a camera in it, at a marker, a set defined image, which is then tracked to be relatable to some digital content to then be displayed up on the screen. Think of it this way. This here, my hand that's behind the phone, is the marker, the image, the photograph, the representation that we want to detect. It could be a building, it can be anything, just has to be a defined, clearly concise, distinctive image, I suppose. It works off a 2D plane, even though it's a 3D object it can be, but we'll work with that. You simply point to your phone at the marker. Using the app or server device, it basically detects the correlation points between the contrast between the high and low points of the said image or object, and then on the screen will overlay a digital representation associated to the image that's been detected. And as you move your phone around, the digital content will change and relate to the orientation of the user and the device that's pointing at the image. Augmented reality is kind of what Intermedia is all about. It's what we started off with, it's our baby, it's one of our core projects and products that we offer people. But we haven't really explained why we do it and what the advantages of augmented reality is, as well as we probably should, which is why we decided to do these video series. So today I'll just go into the rough outlines of augmented reality and the benefits. And we'll go into some future discussions and tutorials in the coming weeks and months if this video gets enough interest and likes. So augmented reality been around, it's a term that's been around since, well, it's been around since late Victorian times really. The term has, not the actual technology behind it. It's nothing new, it's quite simple technologies. QR codes are kind of like augmented reality, where it scans a QR code, those black and white ugly representations that when the camera detects it takes you to a website or video reel. But augmented reality can be a lot more advanced than that, and that's kind of what we try and promote. Picture a book of pictures with words. Those words can't talk to you, those pictures can't breathe, they can't come alive, they don't pop out. It's not like a 3D book. With augmented reality that's possible. We can get pictures that have video clips playing. You can have words that audio read out to you via your phone's microphone and device settings. You know, that stuff. It's pretty simple technology. It's really easy to implement, and it's quite cost effective, and it holds great engaging value to clients, customers and the user, me and you, and you know, everybody else essentially. So augmented reality is, in terms of the spectrum of realities, it's basically down here, with virtual reality being the opposite end and the real world in the middle. If we picture it this way, it's a lot easier for your head to wrap around the differences between one reality, another reality, and you know, the course, individual, what we know and live every day. So augmented reality is designed to create digital overlays in the real world setting, enhance the add extra value into our day-to-day lives. This can be everything from working out where you're going to put a piece of furniture in your flat without actually having to carry the piece of furniture. You can put down a little mark on the floor, point your phone on the marker, and the sofa, let's say, pops out on your screen, and you can visually represent it and see what it'd be like in that room. That's the sort of stuff we can do as intermediate, but we'll talk about that in other videos. And that's what basically augmented reality is. It's a interactive engagement. You can hit it, you can play with it, you can stretch it, grow it, do all the stuff you expect on your smartphones nowadays. It's quite often used in marketing as a kind of visual grabbing experience, 3D models popping out and videos playing. It's quite often seen as expensive to implement, but it really isn't. It's one of the most cost-effective things if the campaign is operated correctly, which is why as a service we try and relate well to our clients and offer the best value and solutions possible to them. So augmented reality isn't for everybody. It's more easy to deploy because it's mass usable. Anybody with a mobile phone or camera device typically can access augmented reality. You don't have to have high-end gear. It runs mainly nowadays off apps and programs, can run off websites. You know, there's no need for the heavy equipment focus, which makes it ideal for everyday consumer use. And tourism, marketing, you know, it's accessible. That's what you want sometimes, is engaging, accessible materials. And that's what augmented reality often is. Now if we go to the other end of the spectrum, let's just pull ourselves away and go into the other, with virtual reality. Now, virtual reality is essentially a kind of like this. It's a sensory depriving, sensory enhancing, depends on your viewpoint, technology that is designed to basically take the user out of the real world setting, place them into a virtual setting where the two can be almost indistinguishable, or the brain registers the virtual world as an experience, I suppose is the best way. Now again, virtuality hasn't been new, it's been around for decades. We've seen it a lot in sci-fi films, but it's only been in the last 2 years, 3 years that it's actually become consumer friendly. With this year looking to be a heavy focus on the virtual reality market, mainly in the gaming sector, but we're seeing a lot more use for virtual reality outside of that, such as virtual films, television shows, and also walkthroughs of building sites and projects, which is the main advantage, I suppose, of virtual reality, which we'll go on to a bit later on. So virtual reality, we'll talk about today, mainly because I've got one here, is a headset mainly. Now the headset you simply place on your head like this. It works via 2 screens in front of your eyes at a set distance away using lenses. The user head tracking is detected by the wires plugged into a computer device, or quite commonly now a smartphone within the unit itself. typically they're quite heavily wired at the moment. That will be reduced over time. They are getting a lot more user-friendly for walking around, less bulky than this one is. So if we look at the inside of the unit, you see we've got two lenses. Behind those two lenses is a screen, and that just basically puts an image on both sides, one slightly off centre. Like the 3D screens that you see, 3D technology, that's basically what Virtuality works like. Now Virtuality tends to be a segregating technology. You are quite often encapsulated in a digital world, I suppose, and you are often aware that you are wearing these ridiculous units. Units such as Microsoft HoloLens and Project Morpheus might reduce this a bit by the way they've implemented Virtuality, but as a whole it is kind of a segregated experience. But that doesn't make it any less engaging or impactful or useful. Virtual reality as a system is quite often best utilised for walkthroughs and rapid prototyping. How many times have you watched a film or played a game that wants to be in the action? You know, that is what Virtuality lets us do. It isn't quite perfected yet, but it is going to get that way, and it's a technology that we're going to see a lot more of in the future. So if you can get involved in it early, you know, do so. There's a lot of places where you can you try your hands on Virtuality units nowadays, but if you can't get your hands on one, I would recommend trying to find somewhere you can and experience it for yourself, because they will become commonplace, they will get more cost effective, and there is already films, TV shows and content being produced for these units already, so it's going to take off. But maybe not as well as people may think it will, like the 3D TVs didn't really take off, but there will be a certain market this will appeal to, and once they iron out the bugs such as the feeling of motion sickness that you can sometimes get from using an encapsulating experience such as VR, the technology will be there and readily deployable, and it's fun, it's engaging, and it's a talking point. If you want to sell something, make it engaging, make it interactive, make it talking point, essentially. Make it something different. And that's what Virtuality does. Virtuality, in terms of our recommendations, we recommend quite often for more a workshop focus or a business-to-business style promotion of an event or a product. Think of it this way: you've got a building site, you've got an empty plan of land, but you haven't yet built anything, and you don't quite want to spend money to build something that might not be approved by the end user at the end. So with Virtuality, put a unit on the client, they can walk around the building site or the house, get a feel of what the place looks like, all built digitally, you know, it feels like they're there. And then they can take it off, and you know, you haven't spent any money in terms of to build a building that may not be, you know, match the requirements. It's a lot cheaper to deploy, it's quicker to deploy, it's rapid prototyping quite often in essence, and Virtuality for kids is going to be amazing. Think of school trips where you can't get kids to go to abroad to certain countries or certain historic sites. They can't physically get there, or you can't afford to. Put back a virtual reality unit on them, you know, instantly transported from where you are to where you want them to be. They can experience history firsthand through the first person perspective. You know, it feels like you're there, and it's just it's a more involving experience. So we'll see a lot more of it yet. Now, what I'm going to talk about now is basically about the middle bit, the real world, and how these two technologies are kind of relate to, I suppose. So we all know the real world, we live it, we touch it, we're tangible, you know, we've got 3D printing nowadays, which allows us to make our thoughts and ideas and creations be digitally produced and then printed so we can physically touch it. You know, we can have things like this sort of, not exactly this because it's a pop figure, but you know, things like this printed quite easily, cheaply, you know, it's physically there. Augmented reality is allowing us to overlay digital content in a real world setting It's not really there, it's only on the screen, so you can't physically touch it, so it feels, it's not necessarily a great solution that way, but you can still see everything around you. You're not, in your own experience, everybody can access it, everybody can get a perspective, you can move around the room, you've got freedom of control of what you see. Augmented reality it doesn't deter from the real world, but it can enhance it. It's an enhancement tool for the real world. Whereas virtual reality, it's putting you into a digital escape, it's taking you away from the real world. You're still aware that you're in the real world, of course, but it's designed to take you away from your real world setting as a concept. So it's different ends of the spectrum. Augmented reality enhances the real world, whereas virtual reality deters and takes you away from the real world. They're both equally useful, and they're both equally fantastic technologies, and they both have the benefits, and definitely invest or look into both. But depending on what your project is or what you want to do, one way or the other will quite often sell itself towards you. So, where do I stand on these technologies personally? I love them both, basically. I offer services in both, I create both things. I'm an experimenter, I'm a creative technologist. By creative technologist, I mean I use technology in creative ways. I'm looking to run workshops on these technologies to get people to try them out, because it's hard to explain or show benefits without actually utilising them. So if you've got a couple £100, go out and buy a VR unit. If you just want to try augmented reality, there's plenty of links I can put down below, and we've even got our own solutions that we are producing. So it's easy to deploy, it's cheaper, it's probably an easy way to get into, just look at. But they're both in their own way engaging and enhancing experiences. So what are we going to do as a channel from now on? We want to do some video tutorials on these two technologies, showing you some tips, tricks, some ways you could utilise them both. We'll mainly focus to begin with initially on augmented reality, only because it's purely quicker to record and show you what we mean. Whereas virtual reality tends to take a bit longer, because we're having to create a lot more digital aspects. And as a technology, it's not quite as refined as augmented reality is yet. But yes. So if you've got any thoughts, opinions on these two pieces of technology, any topics you want me to discuss, we could talk about gaming console generations, we can talk about how to best market your materials online, how to use HTML5 principles to the best effect, whatever happened to Flash, anything like that. If it's technology I kind of know about, I would like to talk about 3D printing more in the future, but at the moment we do not have our hands on a 3D printer. That's something we'll be liking to try and do in the near future. With our idea is we want to use 3D printing with virtual reality and augmented reality in a creative sense. So yeah, I've been Stephen Fisher for Intermedia, doing our first welcome video. It's probably our first actual video, I suppose, as a video on our channel. We want to do more in the near future, so hit us a link below, share, favourite, subscribe, like. If you ever want to ask any questions about any technologies we have, something I didn't really talk about in this video is pre-existing, on the market, technologies such as the Kinect and the PlayStation Eye camera. This is essentially similar to augmented reality, whereas in it overlays the content based on a real world peripheral or motion of the body. But the reason I didn't talk about them in this video is these two are pretty much industry knowledge by this point, and as a technology for creative senses, there isn't a great deal you can do with them. From my perspective, from your perspective as a business perspective, it's a bit more locked down, and I want to go with more readily available trending technologies, I suppose, is what I should say, rather than technologies which are tried and tested out there, that everything that you can do with them is kind of already been done with them at the moment, or the technology is locked down to a degree where we can't yet quite get in there to play around with. So this has been Stephen Fisher, and with my Google glasses, which I wish I could turn on, I will say goodbye, whilst looking very creepily at the camera. Again, we'll do some more videos soon, and bye bye.